Move on through. So this is Below the Surface, Suicide Awareness and Prevention presentation. And I'm Paige Humphrey. I'm a certified peer educator for counseling services. So we just wanted to put up a trigger warning that this presentation is going to contain sensitive material. We are going to be talking about suicide. So that if that becomes overwhelming for anyone at any point, just you can step out of the room if you need to. You can talk to me afterwards. We would love to help you out. Oh yeah, at any point, if I ask questions or if you have questions, Sammy is my lovely assistant today. She'll need to have you talk into the microphone. We record these videos and then put them up on Counseling Services website in the future. And so if you don't speak into a microphone, the questions don't get recorded. So you won't be on camera, but we will have your voice, your questions or your answers. So does that sound good? Okay, so this is a pretest that Sammy just handed out. Just take a quick moment to fill it out, and then we'll go through all of the answers. There's no grade. We're not going to come out of here if you didn't get the answers right on the pretest. You're not going to be in trouble. You can change them as you go along so that you can have the correct answers. All right, are you about ready? Okay, we can move on. So first we'll start just talking about some of the facts and some of the statistics about suicide in college students particularly. So suicide is one of the leading causes of death among college students, which is really startling and really upsetting. So it does affect college campuses. We're not immune to it by any means. And there are also, if someone doesn't complete suicide, they also might struggle with suicidal thoughts or may attempt suicide. So it's an all-pervasive issue. Just because someone might not actually complete suicide, it doesn't mean they're not struggling. There was a study done in 2012 by the Suicide Prevention Resource Center of undergraduates in the United States. And so this is across a bunch of universities, which is why you see a range of percentages here, not just 1% percentage value, but 6.6 to 7.5% of undergraduates had seriously considered suicide. And these numbers in parentheses are these percentages applied to the K-State population. So that would be how many students on our campus would have seriously considered suicide with this rate value, or these percentage values. So it's a really high number. That's a lot of students who are seriously considering suicide. 2.2 to 2.3 made a plan, which means that they knew how they would have followed through with suicide if they had attempted it. And 1.1 to 1.2% of these students actually attempted suicide. And again, this is the number of K-State students if we apply 1.1 or 1.2% to the roughly 25,000 students that K-State has, which is really startling to think of how many students this is affecting. And then that's not just affecting the student who may attempt or think about suicide, but it affects their friends, their families, and their classmates, maybe professors, really everyone who is involved with them on campus. So what leads to suicide? What might drive someone to think about it, attempt it, complete it? There are a lot of answers. There's no single cause. There's not one, if A happens, then B happens. There are a lot of different factors that come into play. And oops, sorry, 1 second. Let's see, the risk factors. There we go. That's where I was trying to go. There are a number of risk factors, obviously, as we mentioned, that might lead to suicide. So the first, depression, anxiety, substance abuse, or other mental health conditions can increase the risk that someone might commit suicide or may attempt or think about suicide. But these conditions can be managed. So if you or your friend or sibling, loved one becomes diagnosed with any type of mental health condition, it does not guarantee that they will consider suicide, attempt suicide, any of that if they are being properly managed. But if someone has untreated depression or untreated anxiety, they might be more likely to think about suicide. Chronic health conditions and chronic pain can also lead someone to think about suicide. If that doesn't seem intuitive, just consider like if you've ever stubbed your toe or gotten a paper cut and it really hurts and you might get kind of angry, you might curse, and it's kind of a terrible thing, but it fades. Like that pain goes away eventually. But if you're constantly in pain, if you had a paper cut that never stopped stinging, that would affect your life. That would affect you every single day. And some people with chronic pain start to wonder things like, if I'm in pain all of the time, what's the point of staying here? So that seriously affects people. Even though it's a physical condition, it can affect them mentally in the long run. Access to lethal means. So this might mean access to firearms, medication, or other weapons that could help someone in the process of attempting suicide or completing suicide. So if someone is around a lot of, again, guns or medications that could be, if they overdose, that it would kill them. That's really dangerous. If they have the tool, it means they might have the ability to follow through. Prolonged harassment or bullying, I think that one is a little bit more intuitive. If someone is constantly being torn down, it's going to affect them mentally and it's going to make their outlook on life a lot more bleak. Stressful life events, this could include death, divorce, job losses, big moves. So divorce might not be as common for all college students, but it's definitely a possibility. But people have deaths in the family, or someone gets diagnosed with chronic illness, or even just moving far away from your family can be difficult. So this is another example where this is really pertinent to college students. Family history of suicide or personal history of attempts. If someone has parents, cousins, siblings, anyone in the family who's committed suicide, it does increase their risk for attempting suicide or completing suicide. Or a personal history, if you've made or someone has made an attempt, there's a higher chance that they will make another attempt. And then again, childhood abuse, neglect, or trauma. These things affect us when we're young and they stay with us when we're older. And that again is something that you would hopefully see a professional about, and that can help you manage that. But it does, the data shows that people who have been through some sort of childhood trauma, it affects them in the long run and might lead them to think about suicide. So there are warning signs if you encounter someone or you have a friend that you're worried about and they fit any of these warning signs in the list, you might have to talk to them. So the first would be increase in drug or alcohol use. It's one of those things where someone might be being more risky, which I think is also on this list, but it's a type of behavior that they might be trying to escape something in reality, or they're maybe not considering their actions, using lower judgment. Aggression is another sign, so someone might act out more violently or be more disagreeable. Sleeping too much or too little. I feel like that's one of the things we talk about a lot with depression, and that's the same here. If someone is oversleeping or undersleeping, and it's not just because they feel like it, like it's a Saturday and I slept in or something, it's a constant, I never feel like I have energy, or I never feel like I can fall asleep. And acting reckless, again, that goes back with that increase in drug or alcohol use, just different behaviors that almost in a way show that someone might not be caring about their body in the best ways. Withdrawal from activities, so that could be classes, that could be intramural sports, that could just be social gatherings. If it's really hard, if you and your friend just want to get coffee and they are constantly saying, oh, I don't feel well today and I can't do it this day, and it's not because of academic concerns or something, then that might be another sign. Visiting or calling people to say goodbye is a major sign that might show that someone is preparing to not be able to speak with you again. Giving away possessions, again, that falls in that same category of calling people to say goodbye. It's preparing for an end. And isolation from others goes into withdrawal from activities, so not talking to friends, classmates, seeming like they're, even if you're with them, they might not feel like they're there. Might be another reason or another sign that someone might be considering suicide. So what can we do to help? This is really important because we want to help our friends, help our classmates if they're struggling. Okay, this is on the practice test. So we're going to talk about this one directly. The other ones we talked about a little bit more indirectly. True or false, asking someone if they are thinking of killing themselves will increase their risk of suicide. What do we think? Do you want to mobilize? You can both give, one or both of you can give answers, that's fine.
I said yes because I don't really know why I said yes. I just know, me personally, I had a friend who in the past did self-harm, and I never felt comfortable asking her about it because I felt like it would make the situation worse.
Yeah, that's understandable. Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's why I said yes.
Did you want to answer? Or you can if you want to. We're not going to force you.
I said no because I feel like that would draw more attention to it, and then they would be more likely to like get help rather than trying to act on that.
All right. Thank you very much. So the correct answer is false. So, but it's very common to think that asking someone about if they're thinking of killing themselves might make the situation worse. That's an absolutely understandable situation. And it's a normal fear to have. You're not, outlandish in thinking that. But it's actually a very important conversation to have with someone. Like you said, it does draw attention to it. It's in one of my bullet points here. We'll get to that about how, if you are drawing attention to it, someone might be afraid to come forth about that. And it helps bring light to the situation so that someone can get help. So the most important thing that you would ask someone, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about harming yourself? Or are you thinking about committing suicide? So, I'm going to have us say it out loud together. It won't necessarily need to be in the microphone, but you can close your eyes if that's more comfortable. You can look at a wall. You don't have to look at me, but we're going to say it out loud together. I'll say it, and then you say it. Ready? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Thank you. Or are you thinking about committing suicide? Awesome. Good job. Thank you. That can be a really tough thing to ask. We're standing here in a room in a presentation in this very kind of disconnected situation, but it's a really emotional conversation to have with someone that you care about. So getting comfortable saying that can really help. If you're kind of building up to it, you're not sure if you can talk to someone about it, say it in front of a mirror, say it in front of another friend that you can trust. Just get comfortable with that phrase. It is uncomfortable. It's a difficult topic to talk about, but it's really important that we be direct, which is the next bullet point. You don't want to skirt around it. You should just really face that issue head on. Do not be afraid to use the word suicide. Again, it can be really taboo to talk about suicide, but it's better to talk about it now than it is to have something happen and not be able to act on it after someone has attempted suicide or completed suicide. And it's really important that we remain open and non-judgmental. And I put a little asterisk there because we are obviously assuming that we're judging suicide to be bad or attempting suicide to be bad. That's the judgment that we're all making here. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But the non-judgmental part is that we want to meet the person where they're at. So if you ask someone if they're thinking of killing themselves or harming themselves and they say yes, and they start to talk to you about the feelings that they're having, it's really important that you just listen and you don't try to change what they're thinking or assume that they're seeking for attention or that they're kind of making something up. It's important that you just kind of try to empathize and hear what they have to say, what their experiences are going on. That is the non-judgmental part. I had one more point, but that's okay. It's okay if someone gets angry too. Like there's a chance that someone might get mad about that, or they might feel weird about you asking, but it's all right. It's again, one of those situations where, yeah, my friend might be mad, but I would rather have my friend be angry with me and alive and able to receive treatment versus having my friend, not around or in the hospital or some other condition that might happen if they just attempt suicide. So be brave. That's a really hard thing to do, but it's important and it helps people, it saves lives. So other ways to help. establish a safe environment. So this means helping that person be in an environment where they are less likely to be able to hurt themselves. So this might mean if someone has firearms, locking them up and seeing if they'll let you keep the key to that gun safe, or letting you take the firearm so that they're not around them anymore. The same with medications. If it's a medication that they need daily, you can't just take it away from them and then be like, you don't get to have it, but maybe work out some sort of situation where you or someone else helps them. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I give you one of your pills for the day, or however many they need, but that they don't have access to the whole bottle so that they couldn't overdose or hurt themselves that way. And anything else, any other weapons that might be in their home, knives, I don't know what people tend to have, but anything that they might use to hurt themselves, if you want to get it out of their vicinity so that in moments when they might be alone, they are not going to be able to hurt themselves. So, yeah, we just talked about that. Encourage healthy habits. And this can be really tough for someone who is thinking about suicide, because they're going to be in a really low place. So they might either be overeating or not wanting to eat at all, and probably not exercising and all of those things. But in time, if you can help someone maybe just like go for a 30-second walk outside of their house, or help them to eat at all if they're not eating. If they're eating a lot, maybe support your friend being like, hey, I brought us applesauce because that's better than Doritos. Something like that, because taking care of your body physically does help people mentally. So that's a tough one, depending on where the person is at. But if you can encourage healthy habits like sleeping, regular schedule, exercising, eating healthy, seeking professional help, those things are really going to be beneficial for that person in the long run. Okay, I keep forgetting that I have these sub-bullet points. But yes, sleeping, eating, exercising, seeking professional help. Know your local and national resources. This is really important because you might not be able to take care of this whole situation yourself. So you want to be able to reach out to other people and other trained professionals that can help you in this situation. And then know your limits. That kind of falls in the same thing, but you're only human and you're only one human. So you might not be able to fix someone's life for them. That's not your job. That's not the point of you being friends with someone. And I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that we're not trained professionals, in the audience, or if anyone's zooming in, that you're not trained in talking to people about suicide or talking them off of the ledge. So it's okay to know that you're at a point where I've done all I can do. I don't really feel like I can help anymore, and I need to reach out to my resources. And this could be, again, helping your friend set up a counseling session, maybe here at K-State or with another mental health professional, maybe calling 911 for them, calling the suicide hotline, and we'll talk about all of that in a minute. But any type of, or maybe reaching out to parents or reaching out to other friends. Some people, they really want that confidentiality. If they come to you to talk about the fact that they're thinking about suicide, it can be, they might be like, don't tell anyone. I don't want you to tell my parents. I don't want you to tell Jim or Bob or Tara or whoever they might be friends with. But you might reach a point where it's necessary to reach out to someone. And again, I will reiterate, they might be angry with you, but they will be alive. And that is more important in the long run. And I think everyone would agree with that. The last part about know your limits is it's really important to remember, even though it can be very difficult to internalize, that if you have a friend that you're trying to help and they do attempt suicide or they do complete suicide, that it is not your fault, because you did help and you did what you can do, but it's not your fault if you can't, like I said, you can't fix their life for them. So that's a lot of people feel guilty in those situations, and it kind of wrecks people because they think, I should have done more, I could have done more. But if you're doing all that you feel like you can do, then you couldn't have done more, and you did try your best to be a good friend. So, and that, it's not like that's something that comes easily. That's a process that you might have to go through, and hopefully not. But should something happen, or if you know someone who has a close friend commit or attempt suicide, just helping them to understand that this isn't your fault. These were the actions of that other person, and you may have helped the best you could, but that was that. You did the best you could. So that is a very important point, and I really hope to drive that home. So some resources that we have. On the local scale, this is geared towards Manhattan and K-State. So If you have friends in your hometown that you need to help, I would get familiar with your local resources. I can't speak to those now because I don't know where people's hometowns are or where you might be living in the future after you graduate college or move on with your lives in any other way. But this is specific to Manhattan, these local resources. So the first is 911, which is, I guess, a national resource because everyone has 911, but you would be calling the K-State Police or the Manhattan RCPD in this case. But you can call 911 if you or a friend are considering suicide and you're in immediate danger. You can call 911. That is absolutely a possibility and an option, even though I think some people might not be sure about that. The emergency room also, if you call 911, it's probably where they'll take you. But if you want to drive your friend, if they feel more comfortable or you want to spare an ambulance bill, you can drive yourself to the emergency room. I put the address up here, 1823 College Avenue, or if you don't know where that is, it's just west of the football stadium. So the new side of the football stadium where like all the club seating is, it's on that side just across the street. So you can take someone to the emergency room if they are in immediate danger of hurting themselves. If someone is just thinking about it, you might not need to take them to the emergency room. You'll have to use your discretion. But if someone is right there in that moment and they're like, I'm going to attempt suicide right now, or I'm going to commit suicide right now, these are good resources for that because you can get them immediate help. K-State Counseling Services. We are located, if you don't know, this way behind Leisure. And we have all of our staff, and you can help someone make an appointment, but if they need an immediate appointment, we do have a counselor who is, I guess, on deck or waiting for someone who might be in crisis. So again, if it's an immediate situation and you walk your friend to counseling services, so there will be someone to see them if they need to be seen immediately. If not, you can, walk your friend to counseling services and help them, just stand there while they make an appointment, or maybe call. You can't force someone. If you want your friend to go see a counselor, you can encourage them and you can walk with them. But again, you cannot force your friend into it. So that's something to keep in mind, that if they're not willing to go, then they're not willing to go. And you did your part in trying. And if they're comfortable, you could even, if they want you to come into the session with them or something, if you're comfortable with that, they're comfortable with that, and they want that, then that's a possibility. Or you can wait in the waiting room for them, just kind of talk about options. If there's some way to get your friend into counseling that might make it a little bit easier for them than going alone. There are all sorts of options there. And then other community mental health professionals. Sometimes counseling services fills up. As the semester nears the end, sometimes we get a waiting list, or for other reasons, if someone would rather just see someone out in the community, then that's totally fine. It can sometimes be more expensive, but there are places with sliding scales, and if people have health insurance, usually it's at least partially covered if their insurance is local. So that is always another option if you want to go. There's Pawnee Mental Health, and there's Katie's Way, and there's a number of other professionals that I didn't list them here, but you could Google them or just drive around, and if something's like, hey, that says mental health services, let's go there. That would be a whole nother way to help. So national resources, I've included a few. So these would help if you're not in Manhattan, or even if you are in Manhattan, you can still use these resources. They might be more helpful for some people, depending on the person. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. A lot of people know that the Logic song with the title, that is, like, the title of the song is this number, which is really cool because it got this group a lot of publicity. This is a number that you can call any time of the day or night. It's a 24/7 line, and it's free, so you're not going to get charged like a collect call, even though it's a 1-800 number. And there are people who are trained to talk to you or to talk to your friend. So this is something that if your friend is considering suicide, you can call for them, or they can call for themselves. So if someone doesn't want to call but you want to call, that is always an option to remember. And then the other national resource is the crisis text line. So some people don't like to talk on the phone. I know sometimes even I get worked up about little calls that I have to make here and there. And so if you are more comfortable texting, you can have someone text home to 741-741. And again, it's a free service. You're not going to get charged messaging rates or data rates or whatever they charge you for sending texts to, not not your friends. But this is another good resource if you're not able to go to any of these places, talk to any of these people, if this would make someone more comfortable, the text line is available. And I rushed through that. How did we feel about that true or false question? Does asking someone if thinking about hurting themselves increase the danger of suicide? So I have Sammy. I guess since you had the opposite, do you have any thoughts or reflections that you want to share? You don't have to. I'm not going to force you.
I mean, it makes more sense now because I think it does draw attention to the issue. So I can see why it's false instead of true now.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you have any reflections? You don't have to. It's okay. Okay. Well, if we have any other questions, I think I talked really fast because that was a lot of information at once. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted some clarification. Does self-harm is like, I know it's not the same as suicide, but does that like fall under suicide, or I don't I guess I just wanted the
So like if you have a friend that you're worried about if they're harming themselves, I think a lot of it still applies. Yeah. Oops. Oh, those are my sources. I clicked ahead. Well, now you know where the sources came from. But yeah, if you have someone that you're worried about, you can ask them, are you thinking about hurting yourself? You can still, if sometimes that puts someone at risk of committing suicide, even if they don't intend to. Sometimes when people cut themselves, they might overdo it by accident. And then there's kind of this worry about if, are they bleeding too much or something? And so in which case you could take them to the emergency room, call 911. But does that help answer your question, or are you trying to ask something different? Okay, yeah, but definitely addressing it directly with your friend would be important. Either saying like, are you thinking about it, or are you doing it, or I'm concerned that you are harming yourself. Again, using those words directly and being calm and non-judgmental. So I hope that answered your question. Okay. Yes. Good. I love questions.
If there's anything you want K-State students to take away from this presentation, what would it be and why?
That's a good question. I would say that having the conversation with your friend is the number one thing I want people to take away from this conversation, that the word suicide is not taboo. It's okay to talk about with someone. And that if you're worried about someone, that you need to address it directly. You don't want to skirt around the issue. You don't want to be like, hey, so I'm kind of worried about you. Is everything okay? Because person might say, no, it's not okay, but they might not tell you why, or they might lie and say, yes, it's okay. But if you address it head on and you say, hey, I'm worried about you. Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Then it's more likely that they'll be honest and be able to open up and be able to get help, like we mentioned, versus if it kind of stays in the dark. Ooh, and that word sparked my memory. I wanted to advertise that we have our Out of the Darkness walk coming up. So on April 14th, I have this little flyer. I don't know if the video will be able to see this, but on April 14th, which is a Saturday that's coming up, so not this week, but the week after, or the weekend after, is, again, Out of the Darkness walk. It's a walk for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So all of the money that we raise for this event will go directly to the AFSP. And it's free to walk if you are interested, or you know anyone who is interested. When you register, these cards we have over here they'll tell you the website that you can go to. But you can register for the walk in advance, and then you get like a little crowdfunding page, like kind of like a GoFundMe type of thing. And then you could email that link to your friends or your family and say, hey, I want to raise money for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And if you raise a minimum of $100 as a walker, you get a free t-shirt, which is pretty cool. But if you don't raise any money, then that's okay. If you raise $5, that's awesome, because you raised $5 for a really great cause. The walk itself, the check-in for registration starts at 10 a.m. and the walk itself is at noon, and it goes through campus for, is it like 2.5 miles? She's not listening. I think it's close to 2.5 miles. Okay, 2.5 miles. So if you're interested in that, you can grab a little card. If you're zooming in, I don't know if you could see that, but again, you can register online. You can also register the day of if you're not sure if you want to sign up or not. And then on that Saturday, you're like, yeah, you know what? I want to do this walk. You can show up and you can register before the walk happens that day. And we raise money right up until that day. And I think even after that date, if people still want to donate. So to June 1st. So you can donate money to this cause until June 1st. So it's really great if you're interested in that. Do we have more questions? I know this keeps feeling like a lot of info very quickly. But. All right. Well, if that's that, then that's that. Thank you very much.